She was the only guest who danced with the Vampire King's simple brother. He watched from the balcony. The ballroom glittered like the inside of a jewel box, all crystalline chandeliers and walls draped in midnight velvet. Ilara had never seen anything so magnificent or so terrifying. Every guest wore their finest silks and jewels, their faces powdered pale to mimic the hosts they sought to honor or appease. The annual Blood Moon Ball was not an invitation one could refuse. When the House of Thornwood summoned the noble families of the valley, they came. They smiled, they danced, and they pretended not to notice when certain guests disappeared into private chambers and returned looking drained in more ways than one. Ilara adjusted the silver clasp at her throat, a family heirloom that felt more like a collar tonight. She'd come in her aunt's place. Lady Margaret had taken conveniently ill that morning, leaving Ilara to represent their dwindling house. At 23 and unmarried, she was considered both too old to be interesting and too poor to be worthwhile. Which was why no one had asked her to dance in the first hour. She stood near a marble column, watching the swirl of colours as couples moved through a waltz. The musicians played flawlessly, though their faces held the blank exhaustion of those who'd been performing far too long. At the room's centre, moving with predatory grace, was King Casimir Thornwood himself. He was beautiful the way a blade was beautiful, all sharp lines and cold perfection. His hair fell like black silk to his shoulders, and his eyes held the deep crimson of wine left to age in darkness. Those eyes swept the room constantly, missing nothing, claiming everything they touched. Ilara looked away quickly. She'd heard the stories. The king had ruled for 3 centuries, and in that time he'd taken 7 brides. None had survived past their 5th anniversary. "He's magnificent, isn't he?" Ilara turned to find a young woman beside her, eyes glazed with obvious infatuation. "He's dangerous," Ilara corrected quietly. The woman laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass. "What's life without a little danger?" She swept away before Ilara could respond, drawn like a moth toward that lethal flame. Ilara sighed and decided to find the refreshment table. If she couldn't dance, she could at least sample whatever exotic delicacies the vampires provided. She was making her way along the room's perimeter when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong among the refined music and polite laughter. Off-key, cheerful, utterly at odds with the atmosphere. She followed the sound to a small alcove half hidden by a cascading curtain. There, sitting on a velvet bench and playing with a collection of smooth stones, was a man. He was clearly of the Thornwood line. He had the same aristocratic features, the same pale skin and dark hair. But where the king moved with calculated precision, this man rocked slightly as he hummed, arranging his stones in patterns only he understood. His clothes were fine but rumpled, his cravat askew. "Hello," Ilara said softly, not wanting to startle him. His head jerked up, and she found herself looking into eyes that were red like his brother's but softer somehow, warmer. "Hello," he said with genuine delight. "Do you like stones? I found these in the garden. This one looks like a face, see?" He held up a smooth grey pebble. Ilara moved closer, intrigued despite herself. "I do see, that's a very distinguished face." He beamed. "I'm Dorian. I'm not supposed to be at the ball, too many people, too loud, but I wanted to see the dresses, the colours." His gaze swept over her gown, a simple but elegant creation in deep emerald. "Yours is like the forest is my favourite." "Thank you, Dorian, I'm Ilara." She sat beside him and he didn't flinch away. "The forest is my favourite too." "Really?" His whole face lit up. "Most people like the ballroom or the portrait gallery, but the forest has beetles and moss and 16 different kinds of birds. I counted." They talked for several minutes, Dorian telling her about his stones, his birds, the pattern of stars he could see from his tower window. His thoughts jumped like rabbits, but there was a sweetness to him, an openness that felt like fresh air in this stifling place. Dorian, a new voice, sharp as a whip crack. Ilara looked up to find an older woman in black lace, her expression severe. "You know you're not to bother the guests," the woman said, reaching for Dorian's arm. "He wasn't bothering me," Ilara said quickly, rising. "We were having a lovely conversation." The woman, a servant of some kind, looked at her with barely concealed skepticism. "How kind of you to say, miss, but the young master needs his routine maintained. Come, Dorian." Dorian's face fell, he clutched his stones. "But the music, I wanted to see the dancing." "You can't dance, dear, you know that, too complicated." "Actually," Ilara heard herself say, "I was hoping Dorian might dance with me." Both Dorian and the servant stared at her. "I don't know the steps very well," Ilara continued, her heart hammering. "I could use a partner who won't judge if I stumble. What do you say, Dorian?" He looked at his stones, then at the ballroom, then at Ilara. Slowly, a smile spread across his face. "I would like that very much." The servant looked like she wanted to protest, but what could she say? Ilara was a guest, and technically she'd made a request. Ilara extended her hand and Dorian took it. His palm was cool but gentle. She led him onto the floor as a new song began, a simple waltz, Thank the Stars. The change in the room was immediate. Conversations faltered. Dancers turned to stare. The whole glittering assembly watched as Ilara placed one hand on Dorian's shoulder and took his other hand in hers. "Just follow the rhythm," she whispered. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Dorian's brow furrowed in concentration. He stepped on her foot twice in the first few bars, mumbled an apology, then found the beat. His face broke into wonder. "We're dancing," he whispered. "We are," Ilara confirmed, unable to stop her own smile. He wasn't graceful. He was a bit stiff and he counted out loud occasionally. But he was trying so hard, his joy so pure, that Ilara felt something crack open in her chest. Around them, the other dancers had stopped entirely. The music continued, but they swayed alone in a sea of staring faces. Some looked disgusted, others pitying, most were simply confused. And on the balcony overlooking the ballroom, utterly still and silent as a statue, stood King Casimir. His crimson eyes were locked on his brother and the woman in green. His expression was unreadable as stone. The dance ended and Dorian bowed, too deeply, nearly losing his balance. Ilara caught his elbow, laughing, and helped him straighten. The sound of her laughter seemed to break whatever spell had fallen over the room. Conversations resumed, couples returned to dancing, but Ilara could feel the weight of judgment pressing against her skin. "That was wonderful," Dorian said, his eyes shining. "Can we do it again?" "Perhaps later," Ilara said gently. "You should rest a moment. Dancing is tiring work." He nodded seriously. "You're very nice. Most people don't talk to me. They talk about me, but not to me." The simple statement hit Ilara like a blow. Before she could respond, a shadow fell across them. "Miss Ilara Ashford, I believe." She turned and found herself face to face with King Casimir. Up close, he was even more unsettling, beautiful and terrible all at once, his presence like standing near a barely caged predator. She dropped into a curtsy, lowering her eyes. "Your Majesty." "Casimir," Dorian exclaimed happily. "I danced, did you see? Ilara taught me and I only stepped on her feet twice." "I saw," the king's voice was silk over steel. His eyes hadn't left Ilara's face. "How unexpected. Tell me, Miss Ashford, what prompted such charity?" The word strung as it was meant to. Ilara lifted her chin. "It wasn't charity, Your Majesty. I wanted to dance, and Dorian was kind enough to partner me when no one else would." Something flickered in those red eyes. Surprise, anger, it vanished too quickly to tell. "Dorian, go with Mrs. Hem. It's past your usual hour." The earlier servant appeared as if summoned. Perhaps she had been, and Dorian's face fell. "But I wanted to talk more with Ilara." "You're tired," Casimir said, and though his voice was firm, Ilara heard something almost gentle beneath it. "You know how you get when your schedule is disrupted. Go now. Perhaps Miss Ashford will visit another time." Dorian looked at Ilara hopefully. She found herself nodding. "I'd like that very much." He squeezed her hand once, then allowed Mrs. Hem to lead him away. The king watched until his brother disappeared through a side door, and Ilara watched the king. The carefully blank expression, the tension in his jaw. He loved his brother. The realization struck her with unexpected force. "Walk with me," Casimir said. "It wasn't a request." He offered his arm, and after a heartbeat's hesitation, Ilara took it. He led her away from the ballroom, through corridors lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors and weapons that had probably drawn more blood than she could imagine. Finally, they emerged onto a private terrace overlooking the gardens. The moon hung heavy and red in the sky. "The blood moon, of course." "You're afraid," Casimir observed. "I can hear your heart racing, smell it on your skin, yet you don't run." "Would running help?" Ilara asked. His lips curved slightly. "No." "Then I might as well enjoy the view." This time his smile was real, if brief. He released her arm and moved to the balcony's edge, gripping the stone rail. For a long moment he said nothing. "Dorian is my younger brother," he finally said, "by 347 years. Our mother's last child before the transformation took her ability to bear life. She loved him fiercely, made me swear to protect him." "You honor that promise," Ilara said quietly. "I keep him safe, fed, comfortable. He has his towers, his gardens, his collections, everything he could need. Except freedom, except dignity." Casimir turned sharply, and suddenly he was close, too close, his eyes boring into hers. "You dare?" "He's lonely," Ilara interrupted, her fear finally giving way to anger. "He's kept like a pet in a gilded cage. You say you protect him, but from what? From living?" "From cruelty," the words came out harsh, raw. "Do you know what they would do to him? The other noble houses, the courtiers who smile and bow. He doesn't understand deception, manipulation. He would be destroyed by them, used and discarded. So yes, I keep him safe, I keep him hidden, because that is the only kindness I can offer." Ilara's anger deflated, replaced by something sadder. "He told me people talk about him, but not to him. Is that really safety, or just a different kind of cruelty?" Casimir looked away. "You think you understand so much after one dance?" "I understand what it's like to be treated as less than. I'm poor by noble standards, unmarried, largely invisible. People look through me as if I don't exist. It's a special kind of loneliness." "Yet you exist now," Casimir said, his gaze returning to her. "Every person in that ballroom saw you tonight, saw you show kindness to the one creature they all pretend isn't there. Do you know what that makes you?" "Foolish. Dangerous." He stepped closer still, and Ilara's breath caught. "Kind people are the most dangerous of all. They make others want to be better. They shine light in places meant to stay dark." "Is that a threat, Your Majesty?" "A warning and a question." His hand came up, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from his skin. Why did you really dance with my brother? Ilara met his eyes steadily, because he asked with hope in his voice, because he was excited about stones and birds and the colour of my dress, because for 5 minutes he made me forget to be afraid in this house of horrors, because he's kind, your majesty and kindness should be rewarded, not hidden away. Casimir stared at her for a long, breathless moment. Then he did something she never expected. He laughed. It was a rough sound, as if unpracticed but genuine. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most foolish. I haven't decided which. Can't I be both? Apparently. He stepped back and the air felt easier to breathe. Dorian will ask for you. He doesn't make connections easily, but when he does, he holds them tightly. Will you come again? It was asked carefully, with none of the command from before. Yes, Ilara said, if I'm welcome. You're not, Casimir said bluntly. You're disruptive and impertinent and you see entirely too much, but Dorian likes you and I. He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. I honour my promises. He has little enough joy. I won't take this from him. How generous of you. His eyes narrowed. You're mocking me. I'm thanking you, though I admit the sentiment needs work. Another brief smile ghosted across his face. You're a very strange woman, Ilara Ashford. And you're a very complicated king, Casimir Thornwood. The use of his name without title was a breach of etiquette. They both knew it. He could punish her for it, would be expected to even. Instead, he simply said, Come on Tuesday, 3 o'clock. The garden gate will be open. Then he was moving past her, back toward the ballroom, leaving her alone on the terrace with the blood-red moon, and a feeling she couldn't quite name settling in her chest. Behind her, so soft she almost missed it, she heard him speak once more. Oh, thank you for seeing him. And then he was gone. Tuesday came dressed in autumn gold, the sky clear and sharp as glass. Ilara wore her simplest day dress and walking boots, bringing nothing but herself and a small bag of smooth stones she'd collected from the river near her home. The garden gate stood open as promised. She found Dorian in what appeared to be his favourite spot, a small clearing surrounded by ancient oaks, their leaves just beginning to turn. He was crouched by a patch of mushrooms, sketching them carefully in a leather-bound journal. Ilara, he scrambled to his feet, nearly dropping his pencil. You came. Casimir said you would, but sometimes people say things they don't mean. I mean what I say, Ilara told him, holding out the bag. I brought you something. His eyes went wide as he peered inside. River stones, oh, these are perfect. This one is pink, I don't have any pink ones. And this one is flat enough for skipping, though Casimir won't let me near the pond alone because he says I'll fall in. He looked up. I fell in once, 14 years ago. He remembers everything. They spent the afternoon together, and it felt remarkably normal. Dorian showed her his mushroom drawings, surprisingly detailed, and explained the difference between oak moss and beard lichen with passionate enthusiasm. They skipped stones in the pond. Dorian had been right. He was terrible at keeping his balance. They talked about birds and books and the way sunlight looked different through coloured glass. It became a pattern. Tuesdays and Fridays at 3 o'clock the garden gate stood open. Ilara never saw Casimir during those visits, but she felt him watching. A movement at a high window, a shadow in the corridors. The king was there, keeping guard over his brother, though whether he was protecting Dorian from her or simply observing, she couldn't tell. It was on her 5th visit that Dorian asked the question, Do you think I'm simple? They were sitting beneath his favourite oak, surrounded by his collections, stones and leaves and pressed flowers, each carefully labelled in handwriting that wandered across the page. Ilara considered her answer carefully. I think your mind works differently than some people's, but different isn't less. You notice things others miss. You find joy in places others overlook. That's not simple, that's a gift. People are afraid of me, he said quietly. Because I'm vampire, because I'm different, because I'm Casimir's brother and he trailed off. Terrifying, Ilara supplied. Dorian smiled faintly. He tries very hard to be strong, to be what a king should be, but sometimes I think he's lonely too, more lonely than me maybe, because he won't let anyone close. He has you. Yes, but I'm his responsibility, his promise to Mother, I wish. He picked up a stone, turning it over and over. I wish he had someone who saw him the way you see me. The words settled into Ilara's heart with unexpected weight. That evening, for the first time, she encountered the king. She was leaving through the garden when Casimir emerged from the shadows of an archway, silent as smoke. He's happy when you're here, he said without preamble. He talks about you constantly. Ilara says this. Ilara thinks that it's... He paused. Thank you. You're welcome. She studied his face, noting the tiredness around his eyes. When did you last feed? He went very still. That's an inappropriate question. You look unwell. I'm immortal, I don't get unwell. You look tired then, and pale even for a vampire. A muscle worked in his jaw. I don't discuss such matters with humans. She stepped closer, and to her surprise he didn't retreat. Dorian told me you won't take blood by force, that you wait for willing donors, but who would willingly give to a king they fear? That's not your concern, isn't it? If you collapse from starvation, who keeps your brother safe? His eyes flashed red. You overstep. I'm overstepping all over the place lately, might as well commit to it. She held out her wrist. Would it help? Casimir stared at her as if she'd grown a second head. You're offering me your blood. I'm offering help, that's different. Is it? He moved closer and she could see the hunger in his eyes now, carefully leashed. Do you know what you're suggesting? It's not a simple transaction. Blood creates bonds, connections, you would be tied to me. Perhaps you need someone to tie you to humanity occasionally. You seem to be drifting. I'm a vampire king. I'm supposed to be removed from humanity. And how's that working for you? You're starving yourself, isolating yourself, turning into exactly the monster everyone expects. She kept her wrist extended. Or you could accept help from someone who sees you, really sees you, not the king, not the legend, just Casimir. His control cracked. Just for a moment she saw past the cold perfection to something raw and yearning beneath. Then it was gone, shuttered away. You're the most infuriating woman I've ever met, he said. I'll take that as a compliment. It wasn't meant as one. Yet here you are, talking to me instead of compelling me or dismissing me or any of the other things you could do. His hand came up, cool fingers encircling her wrist, not taking, just touching. If I do this, he said quietly, there's no going back. You'll be under my protection, yes, but also under my authority. The court will see you as mine. Do you understand what that means? That I'll be safer than I've ever been. That you'll be a target for anyone who wants to hurt me, and many do. Ilara smiled. I was already a target the moment I danced with Dorian. I'm just making it official. He stared at her a moment longer, then lifted her wrist to his mouth. His lips were cool against her skin. You're certain, a last chance to retreat. I'm certain. The bite was sharp and sweet all at once, pain and pleasure braided together. Ilara gasped but didn't pull away. She felt it, the connection forming, a thread spinning out between them, tying her life to his in ways she didn't fully understand. When he pulled back, his eyes were brighter, his colour better. He licked the wound closed and it sealed without a scar. "You taste of kindness and courage," he said softly, "and a foolishness that will probably get us both killed. At least we'll have company." This time his laugh was fuller, more genuine. "Dorian was right about you." "What did he say?" "That you see colours others miss, that you find joy in unexpected places, that you're," he paused, "special." "He said the same about you." Casimir blinked. "He did. He said you try very hard to be what a king should be, but that you're lonely, more lonely than him because you won't let anyone close." Something in the king's expression shifted, softened. "My brother sees more than I give him credit for." "Most people do, see more than you think, I mean. You just have to let them look." "Is that what you're doing, looking?" "I'm seeing," Ilara corrected. "There's a difference." They stood there in the garden as twilight deepened around them, connected now by blood and something more fragile, understanding perhaps, or the beginning of it. "Come to dinner," Casimir said suddenly. "Both of you, properly in the dining hall, not hidden in gardens or towers. People will talk." "They already are, might as well give them something worth discussing." He held out his arm. "Will you, Ilara Ashford, will you sit at my table and let the world see that the House of Thornwood honours kindness?" She took his arm, feeling the strength in it, the carefully controlled power. "Only if Dorian sits with us, not as a hidden secret but as your brother, your family." Pain flickered across his face. "They'll mock him, whisper, stare." "Let them, we'll stare back." "You make it sound simple." "It is simple, not easy, but simple," she smiled. "Besides, I'm getting good at dancing with people others overlook. Turns out it's my specialty." Casimir looked at her for a long moment, and she saw it happen, the final wall crumbling, the king allowing himself to be just a man, just a brother, just someone tired of being alone. "Friday then, dinner at 8, I'll send a carriage." "We'll be there." He raised her hand to his lips, not to bite this time but to kiss, a gesture of courtly respect that felt weighted with promise. "Thank you," he said, "for seeing us both." Friday came and Ilara wore her green dress again, the colour of forests and hope. The dinner was exactly as complicated as expected. Courtiers whispered, rivals glared, but Dorian sat at his brother's right hand, enthusiastically explaining his mushroom taxonomy to anyone who would listen, and Casimir allowed himself to smile. And Ilara, the poor girl from a dwindling house who'd committed the radical act of kindness, sat between two brothers who'd found their way back to each other. The vampire king watched from his throne, but this time he wasn't alone on his balcony. This time he'd come down to join the dance. Discover more stories of unexpected kindness and unlikely heroes. Join my Patreon. The link is in the description below. Exclusive and uncensored episodes are available only on Patreon. Check the link in the description.